I got number 2. All right. Go ahead and be opening your Bibles to John chapter 4. John chapter 4 is going to be the text. Now, I know you're asking what an evangelistic service is, and I am too. So I've never done this before, and I'm trying to figure out how to be most edifying to you, how I can be most encouraging, and how these times together can be most beneficial. This is not going to be like the evangelism workshops. The evangelism workshops are going to be a similar format, but they're a different goal. When I think of service, I think of edification for the members or edification for the visitors, not so much what we're going to be doing in a workshop. And so if you have any comments or critiques or ways that I can be more edifying, or our time together on Sunday nights can be more edifying and more beneficial to you, let me know. This is not a one and done format, so we can adjust. I did, however, choose John 4 tonight because I know it's an account that you're really familiar with. It's something that you've gone over, you've heard lessons on, you perhaps have read. If I say John 4, maybe you can already tell me what John 4 is about. Or if I said we're going to talk about the woman at the well, maybe you can tell me, oh yeah, that's the Samaritan woman. You already have some ideas of what verses we're going to cover. And really this is a jumping point for us to start discussing how to evangelize like Jesus. When we think about, sorry, let me back it up here. All right, well, that wasn't going to be my first slide, but it is now. So, one other thing. So, if you're in here tonight, I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're married or single or whatever. I'm expecting participation. So, if you don't participate, then we're going to be out of here in like 10 minutes. So, we need to encourage one another in participation. We had some IT problems tonight. Go ahead and I know I asked you to open up to John 4. I was going to have this verse up on the screen, but read with me, or just listen, if you will, to Matthew 10. Jesus is speaking here, and I think I've already confessed this to y'all. When I'm told to do something, I always want to know the why. Why do I have to do something? Why am I required to evangelize? And maybe you are thinking, well, I'm here because I had nothing else to do on Sunday night, but I don't really care to evangelize. This isn't something that I do well. It's not something I particularly care to do or improve in, so why do I have to evangelize? And to that, I always try to look at scriptures whenever I give a reason. This is Jesus speaking in Matthew 10. Thank you, gentlemen, for fixing this. Jesus is talking to his disciples. So if you are a disciple, if you're a Christian, if you're a Christian, if you're someone who bears the name of Christ, then this applies to you. If you care to ever bear the name of Christ and you desire to be a Christian, you desire to become a disciple of Jesus, well, this is going to apply to you too. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a slave above his master. It is enough for the disciple that he become like his teacher. It is enough for the disciple that he become like his teacher, and the slave like his master. Who's the best evangelist you know? It better be Jesus. And that's why we're going to spend so much time looking at how Jesus evangelized. If you're a disciple of Christ, you need to learn how to evangelize. You need to learn how to talk to people in the way Jesus talked to people, and see people in the way Jesus saw people, because he really saw people. And so that's why these things are applicable for us. Now, looking at the text, I asked you guys to read it beforehand. If you have a handout, I was able to put the entire text on the left side of the handout, at least the verses that I want to cover in detail tonight. So one of the things I want to do is kind of just build a profile for this woman. So I asked you guys, what details does the text reveal about this woman? Lifestyle, character, personality. So here's our icebreaker. Who's going first? What do you know about this woman? What do you know about her lifestyle? Okay, so yeah, she's been with several men, and the guy that she's with now, Jesus will go on to say, this isn't your husband. So she's a loose woman, to say the least. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I described that by saying she's had 5 failed marriages.
Okay.
That gives it a different perspective.
Yeah, so she, Brother Patton has mentioned that she has 5 failed marriages, and she's currently in a relationship with this man, and Jesus somehow knows that. So he does something that we're unable to do. He has the complete backstory to this woman because he created her. Any other thoughts? Yes. Were y'all saying the same thing? That's amazing. That's so cool. The Spirit's working really hard, right in this L right here. She knew the differences between the Jews and the Samaritans. She knew that Jews say some things about how to worship God, and that other people say, well, this is how you worship God. And so she saw distinctions. She was able to verbalize those distinctions to Jesus and make it clear, like, hey, I know a little something about religion here as well. Yes, Tanya? So I know a Messiah is coming. Where is he? That comes up in the text. She can quote this idea of the anointed one, God's anointed coming. JD? Yeah.
Yeah, she identified Jacob as their ancestor.
Okay.
Obviously, the Jews thought that too, so they had a commonality in a sort of not predetermination, but lineage.
Okay. So there's a commonality between the Jews and the Samaritans. Maybe you know a little bit about that history. I'm going to remain silent on that just because this text doesn't elaborate on that. I want to focus on the text. My goal is to show you how to read and look at the text and how to learn to evangelize like Jesus. But she knows one of the patriarchs. Some of you, I don't know who's a freshman or not at Florida College, you should probably know the patriarchs because it was just on like your midterm and whatever other test you've taken. So you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. She's able to by name mention Jacob. Yes?
She actually engaged with Jesus.
Okay.
All he did was ask for water.
Okay.
He's the one who responded with these questions that you then answered.
Okay. So yeah, he asks her for water, or says, get me water, and then she seems to be the one provoking this spiritual conversation. And as you read the account, it's really interesting how these things unfold. I want to have you guys tuck that away in the back of your mind for a little bit later. Any other things about the lifestyle, the character, the personality, the worldviews? I see it. Yeah, go ahead.
Speculation, but she kind of seems like an outcast.
Okay, so why would you say that?
She's at the well at the hottest time of day.
Okay.
And she seems to be alone.
Okay.
Typically, women would have traveled together
Okay.
to get water. But she seems like she's on her own, maybe because of the lifestyle that she lives.
So yeah, she seems to be an outsider. She seems to be alone. Most people know you don't cut your grass in the middle of the day. I know that. Like I've learned that since I've been here in Florida. It's the hottest part of the day. But she's going to gather water at the hottest part of the day. I heard a young lady's voice.
It wasn't a young lady, but that was the same.
Oh, okay. Well, man, you must have a beautiful soprano. Yes, sir.
She was interested in worship. She wanted to know about worship.
Yeah, tell us, where's the right place to worship? This is where we get the famous line from Jesus, a day is coming when God is seeking those who can worship and will worship him in spirit and in truth. That's where this text is found. So you have that provocation of teach me what is the right way to worship, or comment on this, Jesus. I think you're like a prophet of some kind. Yes, Eric?
Well, and to piggyback on Michael, she may have been an outcast, but later on we find out when she goes and tells people, Samaria, they listen to her. They initially say, verse 39, many Samaritans in that time believed in him because of the woman's testimony.
Yeah.
So she goes and shares, and they at least listen to her.
Yeah, she's able to get their attention somehow and get people to listen to her. Was it Steve? Yeah.
She has a quality that I find is present in the best prospects, and that is she's honest.
She's honest, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and comment on this. That I'm a straight shooter. Like I don't like I will do small talk. I don't love small talk. Like, I like to kind of just actually get to the point of something. And I deal with people like that a lot. Like, I want to be a straight shooter with them. I want to be honest and open and direct with them. I love people that are just very direct with me, and they're like, look, I don't think there's a God. I'm like, great. That's awesome, because I know where you're at. I love when people, and I ask this question a lot, where do you worship? I go, you know that church over there. Okay, like, you're telling me that you don't really know anything about where you say you worship. Honesty is something that is so key, and I want to make this point now. If you ever hope to foster a relationship with someone and get them to foster a relationship with Jesus and God, you need to be honest. You need to be transparent, and you need to make sure that they understand, like, your shortcomings and your failures. The worst thing we can do in evangelism is put up a veneer and saying, like, yeah, come to our church, because, like, this university group, man, we're perfect. We got it all figured out. We do everything right. And you want to be a part of this group because this is where perfection's found. Do we actually mean what we say when we say, no, like, this is actually a hospital for sick people, and I'm a sick person, and that's why I need to come here. So very important. Any other thoughts, comments? I love that you guys have either read or know a lot about this. This is going to be really helpful. All right, interrupt me if something comes to mind. So we're getting this picture of this woman, and I wrote down some things that we've already mentioned. So she is a woman, and many of you have heard this. Historically, in this time, the woman is viewed as inferior, and maybe even today you feel like women are viewed as inferior. So she's an outsider. She's a Samaritan. This is a group that is despised by the Jews. Jews don't get along with Samaritans. They go around Samaria just to get back home because they don't want to have any dealings with Samaritans. They take the long way around going through water. She comes midday. That's not usual, so that's apart from other women. She's unafraid to engage in this conversation that she has with Jesus. So to that I attributed this characteristic. She might be seeking in some sense. She's willing to ask questions. One of my favorite things is just people that ask questions. Like, I ask so many questions, and I never really have answers. I just love asking questions. I'm like 5 years old when it comes to conversations. She's willing to do that, and she's also willing to have answers be told to her. She's seeking some kind of satisfaction. There's something that's missing in her life, and maybe she's tried to fill it with relationships. Do you guys know anybody like that? Do you know anybody? Like, nod your head, yes or no. That tries to fill their life with, like, relationships. And maybe there's someone that you counsel, they're just your friend, and they're like, hey, I got a new boyfriend this week. And you're like, oh, well, here we go again, like, you know. And there's other things you can fill your life with, but she's trying to find fulfillment in life. And a lot of people are just trying to do that. They're trying to find some kind of something to fill in their blank of, why am I here? What's my purpose? Why do I exist? I don't really know. So she's seeking satisfaction. There's physical satisfaction. She wants some water to drink. And then she also has these religious concepts. She's unsatisfied with human relationships. Obviously, she, as our brother Steve commented, has had 5 failed relationships. She's there by herself, so she's not finding satisfaction in things that she's looked for. Maybe she's ashamed. I don't know. The text doesn't comment on that. The inspired author didn't mention anything of whether or not she felt ashamed or embarrassed, but maybe that's an inference we're allowed to make. She's uncomfortable with discussing personal matters. That's as you read the text, you see that Jesus brings up her history, and then she's like, well, let's talk about something else. Let's just quickly switch gears here. And so she's not comfortable with that. She's open to believing that this guy she's talking to might be a prophet. But that jumps out to me because like she can see there's something unique, there's something special, there's something different about this person that I'm in conversation with. And I need to know a little bit more about you. I want to see what you want to offer me. She seems to be thoughtful. I don't know how intelligent she was, but she asked some really good questions. She asked thought-provoking questions, and in some ways I'm like, man, I wonder if Jesus ever thought, I wish my disciples would ask these kinds of questions, because it seems like they don't get it. And then you'll see an interaction in the text, if you continued reading, that Jesus has with his disciples, where they just kind of miss the point. But she seems to see something. Maybe she wants to be a worshiper of God. Maybe she's asking for clarity for her own relationship with God. Maybe she's just trying to pass the time, but for whatever reason, she asked the question about worshiping God. Where is the right place to worship? What are the parts that I need? And maybe she is waiting for some kind of salvation. Again, that's a leap, and I understand that, but she does ask the question about the Messiah in her conversation with Jesus. So maybe she is looking for a spiritual way to fill the emptiness in her life. So that's the picture that I painted. Someone who is an outsider, someone who's seeking, someone who's empty, and someone who is some kind of spiritual person. This person is a common occurrence. I meet, especially here, like more so than I did in California, like I've met a lot of spiritual people here. Do you know spiritual people? Like people that believe in God in some way, or maybe have a Bible or have read a Bible, or you're like, oh, what'd you do today? And they're like, oh, you know what? I went to church. And they can't tell you much more than that, but they are spiritual people. This is a hard person in some ways to evangelize to, because you don't really know how to break the ice with them. You can't start with an opener and say, well, you need salvation, because maybe they already think they have salvation. This is a difficult person because they know some things about God, and maybe they feel satisfied in what they know about God. But this is common, and I think most of us, if we just went through the line, do you know anybody at school, anybody on your teams, anybody you work with that is spiritual? I think we could find someone like that. Now, if I asked, do you know anyone who's empty? Like, could you find that kind of person? It's crazy. You know what I've learned in 31 years about cashiers? No one really wants to be like a cashier. Like, that's not like the dream job. And maybe that's your dream job, and I'm not downplaying that. But most of the time, like, I love talking to cashiers, because I'm like, hey, like, what are you passionate about? What do you like to do? And no cashier has ever said, man, this is it. Like, I'm living the dream right here. They're like, oh, man, I'm in school, and I'm hoping to study this and pursue this. This is my main form of income right now. And then I'm like, well, but what's your side hustle? That's youth term for, like, what do you do on the side? Like, how do you garner extra income? Oh, well, like, I really like sneakers, so I flip sneakers, or, I work with kids, and you start to see that there is some sort of emptiness, because there is unfulfilled desire. There is unmet expectation in their life. And as your cashier is checking stuff out from your groceries, or like this girl I met at the UPS store, I was like, like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I don't know. She goes, maybe I'll sail around the world. And I was like, well, do you know how to sail? I'm taking classes at USF on sailing. And I was like, all right. And she's like, well, maybe I'll join the military. And I was like, okay. And then, she kept filling out whatever I needed her to do to send, my package. And then she goes, well, you know what? I'm 25. Like, I don't really know what I want to do, but I just know, like, this is not it. And she's like, maybe one day I'll own a UPS store. And I was like, whatever you want to do, like, that's great. But there are people that are empty. Do you know anyone that's seeking? Seeking something more, seeking God, maybe? Do you know anyone who's an outsider? And maybe you're thinking right now, because I know some of you are, well, I'm the outsider. Well, great. Like, go find another outsider. Like, you should be able to relate to the outsiders really well. But these are the kind of people that Jesus came into contact with. So, there's some things I want to notice in the text. Look at verse 4. Speaking of Jesus, he had to pass through Samaria. Is that true? Josh Creel, I know you've studied this text. I'm sure you've preached on this text. Was there no other way for Jesus to get back to Jerusalem other than passing through Samaria? Did he have to, Josh? So in what sense did Jesus have to do this? So there's other ways to get to your destination. Yeah, Ross? His part of his mission goal, what's his mission? What's his goal? To seek and save the lost. Any other thoughts on why the text points out that he had to pass through Samaria? Yeah. But maybe he knew she was going to be there. And maybe he was like, hey, I'm going to talk to this Samaritan woman at the well, and I need to be here. Yes. Okay.
And she had the desire to be acceptable, she just didn't know, and so she's asking honestly. So it could be a foreshadowing that all people will come.
Obviously, we have many, or not many, but enough passages in the Old Testament of God showing how someone might become a proselyte, how someone might become a Jewish convert, how God is going to make himself open to those who are seeking or searching out for him. Yes, Michael?
It may be closely akin to the last comment, but I think this is as much of a lesson for his disciples
Okay.
as it is for anybody, anything else, just because of 33 through 38.
Okay. Yeah.
It was important for them to know this is important.
Yeah.
They went through here for this reason.
So I want to comment, and then I'll let Steve ask his question or make his comment on just painting, again, more of a mental picture. So verse 4, he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a city called he came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of the ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, being wearied from his journey, was sitting thus by the well. Why was he wearied from his journey? Because he's just traveled 30 miles. He's traveled a day and a half, and he, in his mind, needs to come to this situation, this well, this time and place. Steve? Yes.
I would look at this context from the standpoint of he had to go through Samaria because he had to go through Samaria. I don't really know why, but he would take whatever the circumstance or situation is and turn it to his purpose of evangelizing. Wherever he was looking, and he had that opportunity. He knew then to do something with his disciples.
So I want to comment on this, though. So Steve is saying that for whatever reason, he had to go through, and he's going to take time to talk to this woman and then make comments to his disciples. So here's a question. I can't remember if I put it on the handout or not. So y'all need to do some searching here right now. Were there any obstacles to Jesus speaking to this woman outside of what we've mentioned, outside of the fact that she's a Samaritan, outside of the fact that she's a woman? Are there any other obstacles that you see in the text? Barriers, maybe inhibitors, excuses is maybe what we would say. I'm tired, man. Like, I've just spent all this time traveling with my disciples. I've walked 30 miles. I've spent a day and a half. I'm tired. Have you ever not done something because you're tired? Have you ever not maybe shared the gospel with somebody because like you're just like, man, I don't want to get into this right now. I'm just kind of tired. What other barrier do you see in the text that maybe Jesus could have said about this woman, outside of her being a Samaritan, outside of being a woman? She's beyond help. I didn't think about that, but yeah. Maybe he pre-qualifies her. Do we do that? Absolutely. Like, he's like, this is a lost cause. We're going to do a class on that because Jesus does some amazing things with lost causes. But that's not what I thought. Why is this woman there at the well? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. She's busy. Like, I love that you can see that in the text. And could you imagine a world where Jesus is sitting by the well and he's like, man, I'm tired. I'm thirsty. And, she doesn't really want to talk to me. She's busy. Like, she's here to get water. And she just wants to grab her water and go. Have you ever said that about somebody? Like, you're like, oh, I want to talk to that server, but look, they're busy. Like, they're at that table over there. And you know what? It's kind of awkward, and I don't know how to bring it up naturally. Maybe I had a window there, and I just missed it because, I chickened out, and I chicken out too. Like, and now if I bring it up, it's just going to be so unnatural. It's going to be shoehorning religion in their, down their throat. And you know what? Do you see obstacles that Jesus faced that are just like us, things we face? We're tired. They're busy. I'm waiting for my disciples. I'm here by myself. I don't want to start talking to this woman, and then my disciples show up, and then we have an awkward situation. Jesus starts off with this opener in verse 7. Give me a drink. I love some of the opening lines that Jesus produces when he starts evangelizing to people. And he basically just says, hey, can I have some water? Like, is that a question that takes a lot of courage? Like, if you're sitting down in a restaurant, do you need to say a prayer for courage to ask for your drink? No. Can I get some water? That's his opener. He disregards racial, social barriers, and he uses this ordinary object of water to teach a spiritual lesson. He's gonna present to her living water. There's a lot we can say about that. There's a lot that has been said about that. Start thinking like this, though. Like, find a way to take something that is non-spiritual and bring it to the spiritual. This is what that looks like. And these are things that happen frequently in my life, so I'm just used to saying them now. I've gone to so many restaurants, and people are like, wow, you have great kids. Like, your family is a beautiful family. Y'all are just great. Now, I could just say, well, thank you. Like, just let it go. Could say, oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Like, yeah, my wife does a lot to take care of the kids. She does a lot of the training at home, and that's a true answer also. Or I could push myself to take something that is non-spiritual to the spiritual level and say, which I do, yeah, you know what? We've had a huge blessing to have a church family that helps support us and helps train our children as well. We've just learned from people that we look up to whose kids are Christians that, man, we want our kids to turn out like that. Are there ways you can start taking what Jesus does and take an ordinary object to a spiritual level? Are there ways you can start changing your language and manipulating your language so that someone can see a spiritual lesson to come out of that? It's not hard once you start doing it, but you have to be thinking about this. So think about a compliment. Think about something that happens in your day-to-day life. Think about something you hear all the time. And this is the common example, and I love that many of you have told me this story already. Many of you have come up to me and have said, you know, one of the things I started doing was when people say, how are you doing? I say, I'm blessed. And again, those little things that you take from the ordinary to the spiritual are hugely important. He is able to discern, make a difference, make a distinction between natural desires, and he appealed to the deeper reality. This one takes maybe a little bit more work, takes a little bit more preparation, takes a little bit more maybe life experience or observation, some wisdom to be garnered in the way you've moved through life. But he's able to see what she really needs. And it's not really another relationship, and it's not really water. She needs a way to fulfill her purpose and a way to fulfill that emptiness that she has. And he's able to help her realize that and to see that. And so that's something that he does really well. He's kind and yet direct. That also takes some finessing. It's not always kind sounding or gentle sounding to be direct with people, but it is sometimes the most loving thing that you can do in that situation. I shared this story with you this morning in the Leviticus class, and it's a true story. I have a Jewish friend who celebrated Yom Kippur, and I asked him, like, what does it mean? And he tells me what it means, and then as I continue telling the story, the point is, he goes, have you ever celebrated Yom Kippur? And I said, well, I celebrate the Day of Atonement almost every single day, and I observe the Day of Atonement every Sunday because I worship the real thing and you're worshiping the shadow. And I was very direct in what I was saying because I love this guy, and he is a very zealous Jew. It doesn't sound kind, but I really care about him. That's something that I think some of us need to do better. Like, we just need to be more direct with people. And that goes to the honesty comment. You could be the nicest person in the world. And you could be so nice that you're just watching everybody around you go to hell. Because you're so nice, and you're so kind, and you don't want to rock the boat. But Jesus gets to the point, and he's very direct. He allowed her to kind of dictate the conversation. That again takes some learning and finessing, where you maybe let out some slack in how a person approaches the conversations, what questions they ask, but you kind of like hold the line the whole time so it doesn't become a useless conversation. He is unafraid to discuss religious matters with her. Some of you maybe feel a little bit timid at that because you don't know enough. And there's a point that we're going to get to at the end of the lesson here. But Jesus is happy to have an open discussion with her. He answers, and I don't know why I put a big word on there, but he answers her questions and basically appeals to what is truth for everyone. So he doesn't allow any kind of religious or cultural divisions to dictate what truth is. He directly points out and corrects religious failures and false doctrines. He focuses on the Father and on a genuine relationship with God. That is one that I think most of us can improve on as well, is also making the conversation more about God, more about truth, less about us, less about our church. I think sometimes we try to like sell the church that we're a member of, and we forget, like, well, no, my goal is not to bring them into university. My goal is to bring them into the kingdom of God. And that conversation sounds really different. Brother Josh talked about that a little bit in his lesson this morning. So, questions or comments or anything that you guys observed in the text that we haven't discussed? Yes.
So I'm going to actually piggyback off the point number 6, letting her influence the conversation.
Okay.
And your point about seeking the lost is actually exactly it.
Yeah.
And that really means you're going to have to shut up and let them talk a little bit and to understand where they're at so you can respond to that.
Amen. There are so many times where I'll take a Christian with me to a study, and I know what we're going to study, and so I prep them, and I say, hey, when we get to verse 8, don't ask or say anything about verse 8. Because what you're going to do is muddy the conversation, and you're going to confuse the time out of them. Someone gave me this advice, and it's been solid advice. If they're not smart enough to ask the question, they're probably not smart enough to receive the answer. And the point is not on intelligence, but if they're not ready to ask the question, if they're not ready to say, hey, tell me about the Messiah, because I have some ideas or some inclination or some preconceived notions or understanding of the Messiah, then maybe that's not what you start with. You find out where they're at and you answer their questions. You meet them where they're at, and you'll be much more effective than just following a scripted agenda that you have set out. But again, that also takes a skill in listening and understanding and really paying attention to what they're saying, because what happens is most of the time, or what can happen is I have to get this lesson covered, and so I don't really care what you're saying. I'm going to let you ask questions, but really I'm just going to cover my material anyway. And so meeting people where they're at is hugely important. There's been times where I want to get into a chapter so I can study a chapter with them, and I realize we have to start at explaining that the Bible is divided between an Old and a New Testament. I have to explain, hey, there's some numbers in the Bible. There's big numbers that are chapters. There's little numbers that are verses. Those are all man-made. You're going to find notes in your Bible. Those are also man-made. And maybe I don't get into an actual chapter, but guess what? They're probably really excited to come back the next time because I'm like, hey, we didn't get to study, but next time we can jump into the text and now you have a better understanding. This concept of being patient and meeting people where they're at is hugely important. Thanks for following that up. Other questions, comments, observations? Yes?
Going back to number one, where it says you had to go, I was just thinking, I mean, this isn't inferred, I guess, but if you look at Acts and like Paul's journeys and everything, they were completely and totally led by the Spirit as to who they were going to talk to, who to present the gospel to. And so I wonder if that's kind of what that phrase means. And, not that we hear the audible voice of God or the Holy Spirit today telling us, talk to that person.
Yeah.
I think we need to lean more into that and be open to that and pray for that, because God, if the Holy Spirit, I believe, will lead us to opportunities of people who are seeking. And you have that word at the bottom that she was seeking. And so maybe the Holy Spirit, God told him to go there at this time and talk to this woman. And he had to go. Just like it says in John, he only does and says what the Father tells him to do.
There are so many times where if we're just more cognizant of seeing people and valuing them, that we would feel like, man, I feel like God put me here to talk to this person. And maybe it's not so much that God sent you to that particular Publix and he didn't send you to the other one. It's just that you're more conscious of it. But yeah, he had to go and he was going to make the most of this opportunity. Yes?
Why do you think Peter in Acts, when he goes to Cornelius, has such a problem teaching to the Gentiles after this story, after they had just gone through Samaria with Jesus, and he was talking with Gentiles?
That's a great question. So why did Peter have such a hard time going and talking to Cornelius, who was a Gentile, with him being a Jew, knowing that Cornelius was unclean, and Peter would have been unclean going into the house of a Gentile? So here's my question for you. Do you know it's wrong to sin?
What'd you say?
Do you know that it's wrong to sin?
Yes.
Do you still sin?
Yes.
But you know it's wrong. So what's the point? There is a growth process, and I'm not picking on you. I know it feels like it. You can meet me in the parking lot. But But there's this point that I think there is some growth, and there's this degree of ascension that we're trying to garner at, and myself included, where like there are more things that I can and we need to understand, and there are better ways to approach people and see people. But I'm going to make this point now because I think it's important. Jesus meets up, or his disciples come back to Jesus in verse 31 of the text, and I didn't include this in the handout, but I will talk about verse 35. They say, Rabbi, we got the food, we went and purchased it, eat. He says, I have food to eat that you do not know about. So the disciples saying to one another, no one brought him anything to eat, did he? Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. And here's the point, and this verse is included in the handout. Do you not say, there are yet 4 months, and then the harvest comes? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, that they are white for harvest. That is the takeaway verse that I want you guys to leave home today, meditating on and thinking about. If Peter had seen Cornelius and had seen that, hey, this is a soul that God values, and this is someone who can come to Christ rather than a Gentile who is unclean and who is defiled, then maybe he would have been more apt to go to him. And obviously, God worked that situation out, and he worked it out to his perfection. But open your eyes. I asked you in the question, and this was a purposeful question in verse 3. Do you know anyone like this woman? And I can make it even more broader. Do you know anyone who is outside of Christ right now? And if you don't, when you leave here and you go and get your dinner, or you go and you buy your groceries, just ask them. Ask them the simple question. Be direct. Hey, where do you worship? I just got out of worship. And I guarantee you, they will tell you a lot about what they know about worship and where they're worshiping. And here's what's interesting too. There's another way you can approach that question. Oh, do you work every Sunday? And if they say yes, well then, man, you know that they're probably not worshiping somewhere on Sunday mornings or Sunday nights. Open your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. There are so many people that are like this woman. But if you're so consumed by your own life and your own desires and your own passion and your own insecurities and your own hesitations and your own lack of knowledge and your own whatever, like you're not going to see people. And when you don't see people and you don't see souls, you're not being like Jesus. You're not really trying to be a disciple, because the disciple is trying to be like their teacher. And your teacher saw souls. Your teacher saw this woman. And your teacher met this woman where she was at. And praise God that in this conversation with her, she comes to a realization of who he is or who he might be. I don't know if she was really converted or not, but she goes back home and she talks to her town and she says, man, come see this guy. This couldn't be the Messiah, could he? And other people come and they see Jesus. And look what Jesus does. Jesus was tired. He was hungry. He was on his way. He was busy. He had somewhere to be. Look at this in verse 40 of John 4. So when the Samaritans came to Jesus, they were asking him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. Jesus had somewhere to be. Jesus was going to go to Jerusalem to die and bring salvation to the world. But you know what? It was important for Jesus to stay 2 extra days. Because of this woman. Because of the people that she brought to him. Have you ever extended your vacation to encourage someone else? Or to bring someone else to a knowledge of Christ? Have you ever stayed longer after services to encourage a brother or sister who is struggling in their faith and really listen to them? So this is what we're going to close with. I'm just calling this our prayer list, because this is what I got. But if you have something else, like, you pray that. I think we would do well this week in considering people and asking God, God, let me see, show me who the outsiders are. And show me how I might be able to influence them with the gospel. And some of you don't need to pray that prayer because you already know who the outsiders are. You have someone in mind, or you have someone's in mind. God, maybe I can't enter into a religious conversation with them because I don't know enough. Help me learn more. Help me grow. You don't need to know everything to start teaching people. I don't know everything, and I have so much I need to learn. But obviously, I can teach people. You have to be willing. God, give me wisdom and discernment, and when I talk to people, that I might say what I need to say when I need to say it. Help me do that. Wouldn't we love to say the right thing at the right time? We often think that's what evangelism is finding the right person and saying the right words in the right order at the right time, and that's not really what it is. And then courage. God, whatever fears I might have, give me courage. Revelation 21 and verse 8 is a verse that many of you are familiar with. And it talks about the people that will not be in heaven. And it lists people that we would expect. The liars, the adulterers, the sorcerers. Ungodly people will not be in heaven. You know what the first thing on that list is? The cowardly. I need courage. I need courage so I can do what my rabbi, what my teacher, what my master has done, and I can follow in their footsteps, or in his footsteps. There's a lot that we can say about evangelism, but I'm going to repeat this, Lord willing, when I do the evangelism workshop. I'll repeat it as often as I can remember it. I'm going to tell you why I decided to come to university. One of the whys I decided to come to university. One of the reasons I wanted to be here is because some of you came up to me and you were so excited to evangelize. And the way you talked was like this, or something like this. I cannot wait to do some evangelism. Cannot wait to do some evangelism. And in my own prayer and my own thinking, I was like, God, this is the group I need to be a part of. Not because you're saying the right thing, but because I can help you change this mindset, I think. Evangelism is not what you do. Because what happens when you treat it like what you do is you leave this building and you're like, man, I evangelized today. I was at that service and I talked about the woman at the well. Did you hear my comment? I was there. JP acknowledged me. Evangelism is not what you do. And if you think that doing evangelism is pleasing to God, that's not right. Evangelism is who you are. If you are a disciple of Jesus, you will evangelize. If you're trying to be like Christ, Christ evangelized. Read Luke 15. That's where this title slide comes from, Seeking the Lost. Luke 15 is Jesus just being Jesus. And is that not your goal? To be more like Christ every single day? If that's not your goal, then let us help you. I want that to be your goal. I want to pray with you. I want to study with you. We're, at this point, going to close out with our lesson. Any final questions or comments that y'all might have? Yeah, Jacob?
There's a really interesting, to use that big word again, dichotomy here in this story that I see. disciples go to get food, Jesus goes to get a drink. The disciples go into a town full of people and full of opportunities to evangelize, and they bring back food. Jesus goes to a well where there may not be anybody. It's in the middle of the desert. It's in a desolate place at an unpopular time of day. And he finds one woman, and he manages to bring a whole town of people to God. So the disciples go back, go and they get some food. Jesus goes, and he brings back a whole town of people. And what's the difference there? And I think it's what you've been talking about all night. It's our intent and our purpose and just the way that we live our lives. So it's about always be looking for those opportunities. So that's just something that's really interesting about this story.
That's a powerful point, brother. Thank you for sharing that. If you didn't hear it, just see him after class. That was awesome. Praise God for your observation. Any other questions or comments? All right. At this time, we're gonna sing a song. Some of you picked up a later copy and have a copy of the song on the back of the handout. If not, don't worry. It's going to be up on the PowerPoint in a minute. I chose this song because of the words. And it's a really easy tune. If you don't know it, I'm not going to perform for you because I want you guys to actually stay. So, but Brother Nathan Shepard is going to lead this for us. We're going to sing it, and I really want you to pay attention to the words. Like, the words are what are really important. Verse 3 is my favorite verse in the song. It really jumped out at me. We bear the torch that flaming fell from the hands of those who gave their lives proclaiming that Jesus died and rose. Ours is the same commission, the same glad message ours, fired by the same ambition. To thee we yield our powers. Think about what we're about to sing to one another. Think about what we're going to sing to the Lord. If while we're singing this song, you have a need, if you desire prayers, if you're ready to start serving the Lord today and you want to put on Christ in baptism and you want to start being a soul winner for Jesus like we sing, we're ready to do that. I want to serve you and just let those needs be known. I'm going to ask everyone to stand as we get ready to sing this song. And Brother Shepard, I've not, oh, there you are. I was like, I haven't seen him yet, so I'm starting to get real nervous here. Will you please prepare us?